Welcome back to our channel World of Royals.
Okay, so you've probably already seen the headlines by now. Prince Harry is back in London, once again sitting in a courtroom, once again taking on the British press. And this time, it's not just another minor dispute or behind-the-scenes legal filing. This one is messy, really messy. Harry is going after Associated Newspapers, the company behind the Daily Mail, accusing them of years of unlawful behavior. We're talking phone hacking, using private investigators, illegal information gathering, the whole list of tabloid sins. And if you've followed Harry at all over the past few years, none of this is surprising. He's made it very clear that he sees the British press as a villain in his life story. The people who chased his mother invaded his privacy and, in his view, made his life unbearable. And look, no one's pretending the British tabloids are saints. They can be ruthless. But this case is starting to look a lot more complicated than Harry probably expected. The center of it all is Harry's claim that journalists systematically targeted him and his inner circle through illegal means. He's specifically pointing the finger at two well-known figures, Rebecca English, the royal editor of the Daily Mail, and Katie Nicholl, an author and broadcaster who has covered the royal family for years. Now, on paper, Harry's argument sounds serious. He's accusing them of criminal behavior, the kind that could land people in prison. But here's where things take a turn, and not in Harry's favor. Katie Nicholl's defense is basically this. She says Harry himself gave her access, not secretly, not under false pretenses, openly. According to her, Harry invited her to a private party at the Kensington Roof Gardens. Not only that, she says they socialized, spent time in the same circles, and even stayed in contact afterward. Her argument is simple but devastating. The information she reported didn't come from hacking or shady investigators. It came from being allowed into his world. Just sit with that for a second, because if that's true, it completely undermines the idea that she was stalking him from the shadows. Instead, it paints a picture of a prince who, at least at one point, was perfectly comfortable having journalists around, as long as it suited him. And imagine how that lands a courtroom. Harry is sitting there, trying to argue that these people maliciously invaded his life, and one of them responds with, "You invited me." That's not just awkward, that's damaging. And it doesn't stop there. Rebecca English is also pushing back hard against Harry's claims. His legal team introduced an email from 2007 that they say proves English was trying to illegally obtain flight information about his then-girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. But English's lawyers argue it was nothing more than routine journalistic inquiry, the kind that happens every day in newsrooms, not evidence of some criminal plot. They're also pointing to something else that's incredibly important. English had a long-standing professional relationship with Harry back when he was a working royal. She covered him openly, interacted with palace staff, and operated within the normal boundaries of royal reporting at the time. And that starts to reveal a bigger problem for Harry. Because the more this case unfolds, the harder it is to maintain the image of a man who is constantly hiding from the press. What's emerging instead is a much more complicated relationship, one where access, cooperation, and even friendliness existed alongside resentment. And that contradiction is at the heart of everything that's about to come next, and that's really where Harry's case starts to wobble. Because this isn't just about whether tabloids crossed lines years ago. It's about whether Harry's own behavior lines up with the story he's telling now. And the deeper this goes, the more uncomfortable that question becomes. See, Harry is trying to present himself as someone relentlessly pursued, someone who had no control over how the media accesses life. But the evidence being discussed in court suggests something very different. It suggests a prince who, at times, actively engaged with the press, maintained professional relationships, and didn't exactly shut the door when journalists were nearby. And that's a big problem. Because Harry isn't just accusing these reporters of being invasive. He's accusing them of criminal conduct, serious criminal conduct, the kind that could destroy careers and put people behind bars. When you make claims like that, your own past actions matter. A lot. Meanwhile, the optics inside the courtroom aren't helping him either. Reports suggest Harry has looked tense, stressed, and visibly uncomfortable throughout the proceedings. And honestly, that's not hard to understand. This isn't a friendly environment. Every email, every interaction, every past decision is being dissected in public. He's trying to convince a judge that he was wronged, while his own history with the press is being laid bare in real time. And then there's a moment that really made people raise their eyebrows, the alleged outburst. According to reports, Harry supposedly snapped at the judge, invoking his royal birthright and declaring that he couldn't lose. Now, whether that actually happened exactly as described is still debated, but the fact that it's even believable tells you something. Because if there's one thing the British legal system does not care about, it's titles. The whole point is that everyone is equal before the law. So the idea that a prince might suggest he deserves special treatment, that plays terribly. It feeds directly into perception that Harry feels entitled to a different set of rules. And that perception is becoming harder and harder to shake. What's especially damaging is that this isn't just the tabloids talking. It's coming from people who actually know him, people who interacted with him professionally. When journalists like Nicholl and English say, "We were invited," or "We had access because it was given," it carries weight. A lot more weight than anonymous sources or splashy headlines. IT forces people to ask an uncomfortable question. If Harry was willing to engage with the press when it benefited him, how honest is he being now about the past? And that question doesn't stay confined to the courtroom. It spills out into public opinion. Because while Harry is fighting these battles over events that happened years ago, the country he's fighting them in is dealing with very real, very present problems. People are struggling. Bills are going up. Inflation is brutal. The NHS is stretched thin. And against that backdrop, you've got a prince who lives in a California mansion, flying back to London to sue newspapers over old grievances. For a lot of people, it just feels tone deaf, and that's where the sympathy really starts to erode. Not because people suddenly love the tabloids, but because they're tired of the lawsuits, tired of the grievances, tired of the sense that Harry is fighting a deeply personal war while expecting the public to keep cheering him on. What once looked like a principled stand against media abuse is starting to feel more like a fixation, and the longer it goes on, the worse it looks. And the worst part for Harry? This is only setting the stage for what comes next. Because this case isn't happening in a vacuum. It's colliding head-on with Harry's broader public image, and that image is already under serious strain. For years now, Harry has positioned himself as someone who wants privacy, who wants out of spotlight, who wants a quieter life away from royal pressures. But at the same time, he's given explosive interviews, signed massive media deals, starred in a Netflix documentary, and released a tell-all memoir that laid bare deeply personal family conflicts. And that contradiction is becoming impossible to ignore. People are starting to ask, which is it? Do you want privacy or do you want control of the narrative? Because those are not the same thing. And right now, it looks less like Harry wants to be left alone, and more like he wants to decide how he's talked about, and by whom. That's why the victim narrative is wearing thin. Not because Harry hasn't suffered. He has. Losing his mother the way he did was traumatic, and the press absolutely played a role in that tragedy. No one is denying that. But trauma doesn't give you unlimited moral authority forever. At some point, people expect growth. They expect accountability. They expect you to move forward. Instead, what they're seeing is someone who keeps reopening old wounds and blaming the same enemy for everything that's gone wrong. And the timing couldn't be worse. The royal family is already navigating a fragile period. The Queen is gone. Charles has stepped into a role he waited his entire life for. The monarchy is trying to project stability, continuity, and calm. And then Harry reappears in court, accusing journalists of crimes and reigniting public drama. From the outside, it looks like he's throwing a grenade into an already delicate situation. What makes this even more complicated is the personal side of it. King Charles might genuinely want reconciliation. Any parent would. But how do you move toward peace when one side is suing newspapers, attacking credibility, and relitigating the past in public? Lawsuits don't exactly create space for healing. They harden positions. They deepen resentment. And again, the most damaging blows aren't coming from hostile tabloids. They're coming from people who were once on friendly terms with Harry. When those people say, "We weren't sneaking around," or "This was a professional relationship," it strikes at the core of Harry's argument. Because if he wasn't always hiding, then maybe he wasn't always hunted either. That realization forces people to reevaluate everything he said. And once doubt creeps in, It spreads fast at this point. It's not just about phone hacking or private investigators anymore. It's about credibility. And credibility, once lost, is incredibly hard to recover. The judge didn't accept any notion of royal immunity. And increasingly, the public isn't accepting Harry's version of events at face value either. The benefit of the doubt he once enjoyed is slipping away, and that leaves him in a very dangerous position, one where every move he makes only seems to make things worse. And that's why it's hard to see how any of this ends well for Harry. Even if he wins these cases, what does he actually gain? A financial settlement? A symbolic victory over the tabloids? None of that fixes the deeper issues. It won't undo the past. It won't heal his relationship with his family. And it certainly won't restore public goodwill that's already fading to in fact. These lawsuits might be doing the opposite. They're alienating the British public, damaging his reputation, and dragging the royal family back into a cycle of dysfunction they're desperately trying to escape. Instead of looking like a principled stand, it's starting to look like self-sabotage. And you have to wonder who's advising him. Is anyone sitting him down and saying, "This isn't working"? Or is he surrounded by people who only reinforce what he already believes? Because from the outside, it looks like he's trapped in this mindset where he has to keep fighting, even when the fight is clearly costing him more than it's giving back. He seems so focused on correcting the wrongs of the past that he can't see the damage he's doing in the present. He's convinced he's the victim, convinced he's on the right side of history, and that belief makes it almost impossible for him to change course. And here's the harsh truth. Even if he proves misconduct happened, it won't bring his mother back. It won't erase his pain. It won't suddenly make his life feel whole again. What will do is further cement an image of a man who can't let go, who can't move forward, and who can't see how out of step he is with the world around him. That's the real tragedy in all of this. Because Harry isn't without good qualities. He's done meaningful work with veterans. He's spoken openly about mental health. He clearly wants to matter and make a difference. But all that gets overshadowed by the constant legal battles, the public grievances, and the endless drama with the press at some point. It starts to feel like he's addicted to the conflict. Even negative attention keeps him relevant. And the media, of course, is happy to feed that cycle. Every lawsuit, every awkward courtroom moment, every contradiction becomes another headline. The best thing Harry could do right now would be to step away. Truly step away. Go quiet. Focus on his family. Figure out who he wants to be without the constant need to fight an enemy. But that would require letting go of this victim narrative. And it's not clear he's willing to do that instead. It feels like we're headed for more of the same. More lawsuits. More backlash. More erosion of trust. And more distance between Harry and the public that once supported him unconditionally. It's sad, honestly. He had an enormous platform and real potential to do lasting good. But right now, that potential is being buried under resentment and obsession. And whether he realizes it or not, the consequences of his choices are already here. He made his decisions. Now he's living with them. And unless something changes, it's hard to imagine the story ending any differently.